Ariana Brooks stepped out of the black SUV under the scorching sun at the private airport in Atlanta. She pulled down her sunglasses to shield her eyes and adjusted the cuff of her navy blue suit jacket before striding across the hot concrete. The sound of her high heels echoed steadily as Ariana walked toward the private jet. She was used to moving quietly yet decisively through this world, always neat, confident, and only appearing when necessary. Over the past 3 days, she had just completed a speech at the Women Who Build Conference, an event gathering talented founders and leaders. The night before, Ariana had stayed up late helping a young startup from St. Louis, and then showed up early the next morning to speak on perseverance in leadership. Ariana didn't need to try to impress anyone. She was the reason people flocked to the conference. As she neared the plane, she heard the voice of Jasmine, her assistant, coming through her Bluetooth earpiece. The flight plan had been submitted. The weather for the journey to Charlotte was perfect, and the snacks were prepared. Oh, and today was a new pilot, not the usual one. Ariana paused at the foot of the airplane stairs. A tall man in a neat uniform wearing sunglasses stood blocking the path. His name tag read, Mason Burke. Mason flashed a stiff smile, polite but distant. He spoke without looking directly at her. "This flight is for you, Ariana Brooks, right?" Ariana hesitated at the question. "Yes, I am Ariana Brooks." Mason looked up, scanning her face, the suit and the laptop bag with her logo. He let out a small laugh and adjusted his posture. "Sorry, there must be some mix-up. This plane was reserved for another passenger, someone named Ariana Brooks." Ariana stood still, straightening her back. "Yes, that's me, the founder of Vector Hive. This is my plane." A brief moment of hesitation crossed Mason's face, but instead of apologizing, he gently stepped forward to block the stairs. "I'll need to ask you to step back while we verify. It's part of security protocol." Ariana's heart raced, but she remained composed. She pulled out her ID from her jacket pocket, handed over the digital flight contract, and even showed a photo of her sitting on this same plane 2 weeks ago. "I understand you're just doing your job, but I assure you this is my plane and all the paperwork is in order." Mason glanced quickly at his phone, furrowed his brow. "We've had some cases of impersonation, so I need to double-check with the company." A heavy silence hung between them. Ariana took a deep breath. "If I were a white man in khakis and loafers, I'm sure you would have already poured me a celebratory drink by now." Mason tightened his jaw but didn't respond. He grabbed the radio called inside and whispered something into it. Ariana stood there, eyes fixed on the plane, where the last 3 letters of the tail read BRO, short for her family name, Brooks. She had worked for 7 years, putting in 16-hour days to get to this point, yet she was still treated like an outsider. Ariana opened her phone and quickly called Jasmine. Jasmine picked up almost immediately. "Something's wrong," Ariana said briefly, but before she could fully process how bad the situation might be, it got worse. Jasmine responded without hesitation. "I'll contact Charter Direct directly." Ariana hung up. When she looked up again, Mason had company. An older ground crew manager with gray hair holding a clipboard. The man glanced briefly at Ariana before walking straight over to Mason and began whispering, ignoring her entirely. Arms crossed. Ariana watched the 2 men. Neither of them seemed to recognize that she was the one being wronged in this situation. Finally, the manager turned back around, his tone excessively polite. "We just need to verify a bit more, ma'am. It'll be quick." Ariana stared directly at him. "While you're verifying, am I supposed to stand here in the sun, waiting until someone remembers I'm the owner of this plane?" The man simply shrugged lightly. "Standard procedure, ma'am." "Standard procedure for who?" Ariana asked, her voice low but sharp. No one answered. At that moment, she saw a white woman in gym clothes carrying an expensive handbag walk straight through security, no checks, no questions about her paperwork. Ariana took a deep breath, holding back her anger. I've been under contract with Charter Direct for 3 years now. I fly to Charlotte every other week. I'm not just renting the plane, I also pay salaries for your staff. Ariana Brooks held her head high, her gaze never leaving the pilot standing before her. Her final words made the atmosphere feel like it had frozen. I pay his salary, she reminded once again, her voice calm, yet sharp enough to make Mason Burke feel as though his feet were cemented to the concrete. Finally, he looked up his eyes, scanning Ariana as if she had just declared something utterly absurd. Are you really Ariana Brooks? Mason asked, his voice laced with doubt. Ariana looked at him as though he had just asked the most ridiculous question in the world. I've said it 4 times already, she replied. Mason tilted his head, skepticism flickering across his face. I just find it hard to believe. There it was. It wasn't security protocol anymore. It wasn't a lack of verification. It was simply that he didn't believe her. No other reason. Ariana lowered her voice, but every word was like steel. And why is that? Speak plainly. But Mason didn't answer. He turned to look at the ground crew manager, who also avoided eye contact as if wishing to disappear from the scene. Ariana stepped forward, slowly, each movement deliberate and firm. She stopped right in front of Mason, her eyes locked on his without blinking. Do you know what disappoints me the most? She asked, her voice as cold as steel. It's not that you think I don't belong here. I've gotten used to that. I've been doubted in boardrooms and investor meetings, even when I stood on stage as the keynote speaker. But this time is different. Mason squinted as if preparing to defend himself. You looked at me, Ariana continued, and right from the start decided I couldn't be her. Not because of a mix-up, not because of an oversight, but because in your mind, the person who could own this plane doesn't look like me. Mason shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsettled. He tried to interrupt. I didn't mean it like that. Ariana simply nodded, her gaze never leaving him. But that's exactly what you think. You just didn't expect me to call you out on it. At that moment, Ariana's phone buzzed. She answered the call immediately. It was Jasmine, her voice quick and decisive. I just spoke with the operations director at Charter Direct. They're furious. The CEO will call you in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere. For the first time that morning, Ariana smiled, but there was no joy in it. She turned her phone so that Mason and the ground crew manager could hear clearly. My assistant is speaking with your superiors, she said, her tone sharp. And the only thing you should be thinking about now is how to apologize to me properly. Before anyone could say anything further, a silver sedan glided up beside them. The car door opened and a woman stepped out, wearing a burgundy suit, black flats, holding a tablet and a phone. She walked quickly, decisively, not wasting a second. Ariana exhaled softly. She recognized the woman, Layla Warren, regional representative for Charter Direct. Mason didn't. Who's that? Mason asked, still standing in front of the plane like he was guarding treasure. Layla didn't stop. She briefly introduced herself. Layla Warren. I'm from Charter Direct's head office. You're the new pilot, right? She asked. Mason stood a little straighter, trying to regain his professionalism. Yes, ma'am. First week flying for Ms. Brooks. Congratulations, Layla said, her voice cold. We'll discuss your future here later. Ariana crossed her arms over her chest, standing silently as she watched Layla turn to her, her expression softening. Miss Brooks, I apologize for this. It should never have happened. Ariana said nothing. She wanted to see how Mason would explain himself. He gathered his courage and stammered, I was just trying to follow the identity verification protocol. Layla interrupted, not giving him a chance to escape. She presented all the necessary documents: ID, flight booking, electronic contract. If you scan the QR code on her phone like we were trained, you'll find everything matches the passenger list and the plane registration. Mason's face turned bright red, clearly embarrassed. I just wanted to be cautious about security risks, he weakly defended. But she's the one who paid for this plane. He was about to open his mouth to explain again, but this time even the ground crew manager stepped back, avoiding the confrontation. Finally, Ariana spoke, her voice icy cold. He looked me in the eye and said he didn't believe I could be me. Layla turned to Mason, facing him squarely. "Is that true?" Mason looked down clearly, at a loss for words. I didn't mean it that way." "But you said it." Mason lowered his head, unable to defend himself any longer. Layla let the silence stretch, giving Mason a moment to feel the full weight of his actions. After a moment, she turned to Ariana, her voice formal. "Would you like to board the plane now?" Ariana nodded. "Once. Yes, I would." She walked past them, stepping up the stairs, but just as she reached the plane door, Mason's voice rang out frantic. "I didn't mean to offend anyone. Really, this has nothing to do with race." Ariana paused, halfway up, turned and looked down at him, her gaze calm. "Then what do you think it is? My height or my hairstyle?" No answer. Ariana continued up the stairs, reaching the door of the plane. Before she entered, she turned once more, her voice clear and composed. "You saw a black woman in a suit with all the proper documents, and your mind couldn't process that I've cleared airport security with less trouble than today. The truth is, if I were a tall white man in a Patagonia jacket with a golf bag, you'd probably offer to carry my luggage down on the tarmac." Layla stood motionless, her expression unchanged. She coldly issued an order. "Mason, leave your ID badge and name tag at the operations desk." Mason froze. "You mean I'm fired? Human Resources will contact you," Layla replied, her voice unwavering. Mason stood there, stunned, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. But Ariana no longer cared. She sat down in the seat of the plane, buckled her seatbelt, her eyes scanning the familiar interior she had designed herself. The cream leather seats, the dark walnut wood trim. A small brass plaque near the cabin door read, "Brooks," confirming the irrefutable ownership. And still, even here, some people thought she wasn't worthy. Ariana took out her phone and opened the camera app. She wasn't the type to post personal things, but today was different. She pressed record, her voice echoing in the quiet cabin. "I'm sitting on my own plane after being doubted that I could be me. Despite showing my ID booking receipt and contract, and still being turned away just because I didn't fit their image of who should own it. It was all because she didn't fit what they imagined." Ariana Brooks paused, staring directly into the camera lens, her gaze reflecting a deep, unspoken emotion. She wondered how many women, especially women of color, faced situations like this every single day. The only difference was that no one witnessed it. No one believed it until the camera turned on. She pressed the stop button, setting the phone down. Ariana had no idea that just minutes later the world outside would begin to move. Before the plane even left the Atlanta runway, the short video Ariana had posted on her personal account began to spread like wildfire. Initially, she had intended to share it only with friends with the women in her network, but within an hour, 3 entrepreneurs whom Ariana had mentored in the past shared it. Then a journalist in Dallas saw it by chance and posted about it. Following that, a famous social justice account picked it up. Even an A-list actress contributed to spreading the video. By the time the plane touched down in Charlotte, her name had shot to the top of the national trending list. However, the first phone call that truly moved Ariana came before social media erupted. While she was sitting with a drink in hand, trying to organize her chaotic emotions, a flight attendant walked over quietly and whispered, "There's a call from the CEO of Charter Direct on a secure line." Ariana took the headset, her heart sinking. She wasn't sure what to expect from the other side. Ariana Brooks, a deep, warm male voice, said, slowly and sincerely, "I'm Richard Evans. I'm calling to offer my deepest apologies." There was no hint of insincerity, no feeling of reading from a script. She could feel the genuine tone in every word I personally reviewed. The footage, Richard continued, I also read through the entire communication record between the pilot and the ground team. The truth is, you were treated with bias, and clearly we failed not only as service providers, but as human beings. Ariana didn't respond immediately. She wanted to hear more. Richard continued. That pilot's contract has been terminated immediately. The decision has been made, but I'm not calling to salvage the company's image. I'm calling as a father. Ariana raised an eyebrow. Not expecting that. My daughter is 16, he said. She's biracial, black and Vietnamese. Last year she was stopped by a mall security guard accused of stealing a dress that she had already paid for. Even though the receipt was still in her bag, Ariana exhaled softly. That story touched her deeper than any apology could. I can't erase what happened. Richard's voice grew quieter. But I want you to know you're standing up. Your speaking out means so much. Ariana gazed out the window, watching the clouds drift by. She let his words sink in. I wasn't planning to film anything, she said quietly, but Mason Burke's look, his certainty that I couldn't be me, it haunted me. And this, she continued, isn't just a personal issue. It's about the price of silent prejudices. It takes away so much, Richard agreed. Talent, peace of mind, trust. In the silence between them it became sacred, no longer awkward but profound. I want to fly to meet you, Richard added. No media, no cameras, just to truly listen to you. Ariana nodded gently, knowing he couldn't see it. I'll think about it. After a few short, clear, and straightforward exchanges, she took off the headset and leaned back in her seat. Her heart was still pounding, not from the confrontation earlier, but because of the unanswered questions flooding her mind. How many times had she had to work twice as hard to earn half the trust? How many people smiled at her but doubted her in their hearts? She remembered Mason Burke's voice, then polite professional but as cold as steel. You're saying you are Ariana Brooks. That audacity upset her more than any outright insult. She didn't want revenge. What she wanted was simple truth, set free, unchained, not blurred or stifled. Ariana pulled up the video she had just recorded, watching herself in it, calm face, unwavering eyes. Her inbox started to explode, private messages, emails, a few interview requests from the press. But then one particular message made her pause. It was from a woman named Naomi Fields, someone Ariana didn't know. The message read, I was sitting in my car at a Target parking lot watching your video and crying. 2 months ago, the police asked me why I was driving a Tesla. They asked if it was my car. I didn't record it. I just nodded and drove off. I wish I had done what you did. Thank you for making me feel seen. Ariana stared at the screen, her fingers hovering above it. She didn't know yet that this message was just the beginning. Thousands more would follow from strangers, from people with scars like hers. Some stories worse, some quieter, but all real. She had spent her career solving complex tech problems, building large-scale systems. But what happened that day, no algorithm could solve that. By the next morning, Ariana's clip had passed 6 million views. She hadn't said much, just 45 seconds, but that quiet sincerity reached people's hearts more than any angry speech ever could. The entire social media world had exploded. People began sharing their own stories. A black real estate agent locked out of a neighborhood because security thought he was lost. A Latina doctor asked if she was a nurse. An Indian businesswoman questioned when sitting in first class on a Delta flight. One story after another, as if Ariana had opened the loudspeaker for all the whispered grievances that had been bottled up for so long. But what happened next, she never expected. 2 days after the flight, Charter Direct issued an official statement. Not the usual empty apologies, no beating around the bush, no evasion. Their headline, "We failed Ariana Brooks." And here's why that matters. No defense. Just raw honesty, uncomfortable but necessary. Charter Direct publicly admitted that their internal system relied too much on visual verification. They also acknowledged something harder to hear. Their new employees had never been trained on unconscious bias, awareness. Their procedures weren't broken. They simply had never been designed to include people like Ariana Brooks. And in that press release, they committed to something no one expected to have. Ariana present directly to the entire board of directors. When the invitation came, Ariana didn't hesitate. 3 days later, she was in a large conference room with glossy glass walls in Seattle, a city that felt unfamiliar but had now become the venue for an important conversation. The long table stretched out before her with 8 men and women seated on either side. Some faces were tense, some curious, but all were silent. No media, no cameras, only the raw truth. Ariana stood tall, her hands in the pockets of her familiar navy suit, the same one she wore in Atlanta. "I didn't come here to ask for compensation," Ariana began, her voice clear and calm. "And I don't need you to create a scholarship in my name to restore your reputation. I'm here because I've built an empire with my own sweat, and then I was treated like a fraud right in front of the very plane I own. That should frighten all of you. Not because of the media impact, but because it exposes the truth of how people like me are perceived." A board member at the end of the table shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. Ariana didn't blink. "Bias isn't always overt," she continued. "Sometimes it appears quietly wrapped in politeness, wearing a pilot's uniform, and hiding in assumptions you never bother to check." Another board member, a gray-haired woman, coughed lightly to break the thick air. "We are reviewing new training models," she suggested. "Not enough." Ariana cut in. "If your training program only stops at theoretical lessons, then it's just a checkbox for a nice report. Bias isn't a system error. It's part of the base code. And if you don't rewrite that code, it will silently run in the background forever." The room fell completely silent. After a while, a voice broke the quiet, soft yet thoughtful. It was Elijah Kim, a board member in his 60s who had not spoken up until now. "My wife is black," he said slowly. "She's been followed in a supermarket. Once a neighbor even asked if she was a maid. And I didn't understand how painful it was until she stopped telling me about it." The silence in the room was heavy, but no longer confrontational. Ariana nodded slightly. "This," she said, "is not a campaign to destroy anyone personally. This is about accountability, because when the system doesn't believe people like me have a right to belong here, people like me have to prove ourselves every day in every room." By the end of the meeting, the board had unanimously agreed to launch a comprehensive review of their hiring, evaluation, and training processes. Ariana didn't set her hopes high, but still, it was a start. As she left the building, she stepped into the bright California sunlight. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another new message. This one from someone named Darius in Arizona. "You didn't choose to become a role model," the message read, "but thank you for becoming one." Ariana smiled faintly, a brief but sincere smile. She didn't see herself as a symbol. She just felt tired, but her story wasn't over. Because when she stopped trying to protect others' feelings, something unexpected happened. The truth didn't just spread, it stuck. A week after the Atlanta incident, Ariana stood in the backyard of her home, the phone loosely in her hand, watching her dog chase a group of squirrels around the fence. She had turned off her emails for 2 days. She needed space for herself, but the world hadn't stopped. And this time, people weren't just talking about Ariana Brooks. They were talking about the true meaning behind that moment. CNN called NBC wanted her for a roundtable. A major talk show invited her to Los Angeles. Ariana turned down all the offers, not because she wasn't grateful, but because she didn't want her face to become a poster for people to wave around without understanding the weight behind it. That morning, a neighbor Ariana barely knew waved from across the fence. "I saw your video," the woman said. "I showed it to my teenage son." He needed to see that Ariana thanked her, smiled gently, then went back inside. At that moment she wasn't angry, not sad, but more than ever she was acutely aware of how much still needed to be done, not just at the company level, but on the human level. Because all of this, it wasn't just about one pilot or a disappointing morning in Atlanta. It was about every interview where she was underestimated, about every meeting where she was mistaken for the assistant, about every raised eyebrow when she introduced herself as CEO, about the way people looked at her husband every time he picked her up in the Porsche. Each moment added up. That's why Ariana recorded that video that day. Not to get famous, not to make the front page, but because she felt that if she stayed silent, it would be like silently allowing it to continue. The strangest part was that her inbox kept flooding with messages. Strangers, colleagues, mothers, teenagers, people of color and those not of color, all telling their stories and all whispering the same thing. "Thank you for speaking out when I couldn't." That night, Jasmine called her. "Just checking in. How are you?" Ariana curled up on the sofa, pulling a light blanket over her legs. "I'm tired, but not regretful," she replied. Jasmine fell silent for a moment before speaking. "You know, people always say representation matters, but what you've done, it's not just representation. It's resistance. It's reclaiming space that was always yours." Ariana didn't respond immediately. Then she sighed. "I should have just been allowed to get on the plane, like everyone else." Jasmine sighed on the other end of the phone. "You're right, but sadly, we're not there yet." They both fell silent for a long moment, only hearing the soft breaths on the line. Then Ariana spoke gently. "Have we heard from Layla? Yet?" "Yes," Jasmine replied. "She sent flowers along with a handwritten letter. In the letter, she said, you reminded her why she chose this job in the first place." A small smile passed across Ariana's lips, a brief smile, but one that felt truly sincere. "Good," she responded briefly. Outside the window, the sun was slowly setting its brilliant orange light spreading across the living room floor. Ariana's dog, now curled up by the fireplace, let out a lazy sigh, as if sensing the peace that had been found in this home. Ariana reached for the long, dusty notebook opening to a fresh page and wrote a few simple lines. "I didn't choose this moment, but I chose how to respond." And that's enough for now, because the story isn't really about what happened in Atlanta, it's about what people saw in that story. It exposes where we are and reminds us that there is still a long way to go. Sometimes all it takes is one moment, one person who dares to stand up and say, "This is not okay." And suddenly, others remember that they can raise their own voices. Ariana lifted her eyes from the page, looking toward the evening sky, streaked with deep shades of pink and orange. "If something like this ever happens to you," she thought to herself, "don't shrink away. Don't doubt your worth. You deserve to take up space in every room you've worked so hard to enter. Speak your name, tell your story, because someone out there needs to hear it. The story of Ariana Brooks isn't just about a woman stepping onto her own plane. It's the story of quiet efforts of nameless perseverance and of those moments when the world must be reminded we deserve to be here. Ariana didn't speak up to become a symbol. She just wanted to uphold the truth. And sometimes a small act like that is enough to touch millions of hearts. Her journey reminds us that every time we dare to stand up to tell our own story, we are opening the door for others to follow. No need for grandiose words, no need for anger, just determination, presence, and the belief that we belong. If you've ever felt doubted, had to prove your worth in rooms you should have belonged to long ago, then this story is for you too. Remember, you don't need permission to exist. You don't need to shrink to fit someone else's mold. You are you, and that's enough. If Ariana's story touched your heart, leave a message below. We want to hear your story because sometimes all it takes is hearing someone else speak for another person to find their own courage. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to hit like to spread this positive message to more people. Share the video with those who need to hear it. And if you want to continue following inspiring stories, meaningful journeys like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the journey to change the world never starts with one person. It starts with us, with every story told, with every heart touched. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. See you in the next stories.